Hi everyone, welcome back. It has been a while, I know. If you can tell maybe a little bit, we have moved into a new apartment. Jesse and I got our own apartment together, so that's what we've been doing the last few months, is just getting moved in and setting up our new space. I am so excited about it. I can just feel already what a difference it's making in my motivation to do things. I'm sure you guys could tell the last few years really living with family was taking a huge toll on me and my motivation, but I can already feel myself feeling refreshed and remotivated and ready to jump back in and do stuff again. So yeah, I thought that I would kind of just catch up today with a recent reads video because it's been a really long time since I did a recent reads video. I'm not gonna go over every single book that I've read anymore because sometimes I find that I just don't have that much to say. So honestly, I'm gonna do recent reads videos instead of wrap-ups. And some books I've already talked about in more detail in reading vlogs and stuff like that. So, you know, these aren't in any particular order, but I do wanna start off with the Penguin teen arcs that I've read recently because a couple of them are they've been released for 6 months. And sorry, Penguin teen, thank you for these arcs. The first one that I read back in autumn of last year and never got to do in a wrap-up was The Corpse Queen. This book was so good. Again, it's already out. It came out in October. It's set in the 1800s, and the main character is this girl who is, I believe she's an orphan, and she gets a letter from a mysterious relative, like her aunt or something, who is like, hey, come live with me, I'm rich, I'll take care of you, but the condition is that you have to work for me. And the job that she gets is digging up corpses for her aunt because her aunt is running this underground corpse market thing. One of the things that I found really interesting about this book was the way it explored the medical field during this time period and kind of the barriers for entry for women to get into the medical field. I just really liked it. I thought that the kind of time period and historical fiction elements of it were so immersive, and then the storyline itself, the plot and the adventure and everything like that was really good. Kept me hooked, kept me interested, and I really liked it. So yes, thank you Penguin Teen for this, and I'm sorry I did not do a review on it sooner. Autumn of last year, I also read Stephanie Perkins' thriller horror book called The Woods Are Always Watching from Penguin Teen, and this was about these two girls that go hiking, and the region that they're hiking in kind of has all of these creepy ghost stories and oh no, are there creatures in the woods, or is it haunted and stuff like that. And while they're hiking, one of the girls ends up getting injured, and the other girl has to leave her to go back and find help. But while, one of them is alone in the woods with an injury and the other one is alone in the woods trying to find her way back to civilization to find help, things start to go sideways and a lot of stuff goes down. It was a pretty fun read as far as scary books and stuff like that. I was hooked. I couldn't put it down. I was nervous about what was going to happen next. I was really scared for these girls and everything. So yes, and this one, like I said, is already out. It's been out for a long time. And then the last Penguin Teen arc that I've read recently was Cinder and Glass, which is a Cinderella retelling. There are things that I loved about this, but then there are also things that I really did not like about this. I liked the premise of retelling Cinderella in a historical fiction setting. This is set in the French court of King Louis, the Sun King, and most of the characters are based on actual real historical figures, which I thought was really, really neat. And then I was also pretty excited about the plot premise, which is that there's almost a bachelor style competition going on for the prince's hand in marriage. And our main character, she sees this as the only way to get away from her, abusive stepfamily. But the problem is that she is in love with someone else. So yes, I like the premise and everything, but I do think that there were parts of the execution that just did not go very well. I think my biggest pet peeve with this book was that the main character was obnoxiously oblivious. And not just in the way that, some main characters are unaware of big plot points even when the audience is aware of the plot point, but to the point where it was actually just stupid, rocks for brains. I'm sorry. And it made it really unenjoyable. Yeah, that was how I felt about Cinder and Glass. And those are all of the Penguin Teen arcs that I've read recently. And then the other books that I want to review, like right off the bat in this video, are the Librofm books that I have listened to. Librofm is an audiobook platform where you purchase audiobooks and your money can go to local bookstores or bookstores of your choice rather than, you know, Audible paying to Amazon and stuff like that. So I really like the platform. I love listening to audiobooks on there. So the few audiobooks that I've listened to recently on there were The Maidens, which I did not like as a book, but the audiobook was really good, like the narrator and everything. Good audiobook. However, story-wise, I did not like this. It was really set up to be like a dark academia with like classical secret society vibes, you know what I mean? But it was not that. The main character is like this woman trying to be a detective when she's not a detective and solve this mystery of what's going on at her niece's school. But the niece is like not the main character, so you're not really on campus as a student in a dark academia situation very much at all. And yeah, it was just kind of misleading. And then the like conclusion of it was something that was just like, it was surprising and shocking, but it just didn't make a lot of like sense. It wasn't one of those things where you go back and you're like, I've seen all the clues. Wow, that makes so much sense. It was just like, oh, okay. So I was not a big fan of that book. The next audiobook that I listened to on Librofm was The Annual Migration of Clouds, which I actually really loved. I think just because it's kind of hitting me in some ways that are very relevant to my own life right now. The premise of this book, it's kind of like a dystopian future where it's not gone into a lot of detail, but it's kind of a barren world. Like there aren't a lot of people live in like tiny villages where there are barely enough people to like grow the food and take care of each other. Our main character is a girl who gets a letter from a university in like supposedly this haven city far away where she could go and, you know, do more with her life than just live in this village fighting to survive every single day. But going there means abandoning her mother. The people of this village are barely having enough people to get by as it is. So her leaving would really feels like shirking her responsibility and putting a burden on other people so that she can like run away. And on top of that, they're not even sure if this is real, if this university exists, or if this is like a trap or a scam. So the whole book is basically about her just kind of wrestling with all of that. I don't know. It was really good. Like I said, it hit me really hard in a lot of ways. I'm currently planning on moving back to Germany to do my master's degree, and I'm so excited about it, and I know that that's what I want for my future, and that's what's going to give me the best future for myself. But it's also hard not to feel guilty about, you know, leaving my mom and my family. I liked it. I don't know if it was actually like really good or if it was just really good to me, but I liked it. And then the last Librofm audiobook that I listened to, which I also loved, was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. I love this whole series. All of them are just so good. Chef's Kiss, A+. I love them. This one is about the sister Eve Brown, who is kind of the family, like a spoiled child who hasn't really ever done anything for herself. She kind of flits back and forth between interests and hobbies, and like she'll start a business and her parents will pay for it because the family's very wealthy. But then she just like abandons it and flits off to something else. And the family's starting to get really annoyed by it, and they're like, you know what, we're cutting you off. You need to like find your purpose in life, right? You can't just keep doing this. And so Eve Brown ends up in the middle of nowhere in some seaside town at this Airbnb. This was not her plan, but due to a bunch of like happenstance, she ends up being offered a job to work at this Airbnb by the guy who owns it, whose name is Simon, and he is on the like autism spectrum, and he's very kind of wants things done his way. He goes by the rules. He's very like strict and structured and straightforward. And so of course Eve, being this kind of like, I don't know, I'm just kind of here and I'm doing this right now. There's a lot of clashing, but there's also a lot of like understanding between them and like ways that they can appreciate each other in the ways that they've not really ever felt appreciated by, you know, other people or the world at large and stuff like that. And I really liked it. I thought it was so heartwarming and so good. The romance was fire, and I don't know, I just loved it so much. Okay, so now just on to kind of like the other general books that I've read recently. I guess I'll start with like the YA that I've read. I did a buddy read with Aspasia from Asparagus' Reading of These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends. and I really loved them. The series is like a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but it's set in 1920s Shanghai. And of course, the two main characters are from these rival like gangs that control the city. And the side characters are all really amazing too, and you just fall in love with the characters. And everything is so like badass action movie, but also really good romance. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun series. Another book I read recently that I really loved was Romanov, which is an Anastasia retelling. Well, I shouldn't say an Anastasia retelling, not like the movie Anastasia, but like a retelling of the imprisonment and execution of the Romanov family. But it has a fantasy twist. I'm like kind of a nerd for that story in history. I've read a lot of like nonfiction books about it and stuff like that. And yeah, this one really impressed me with how close it stuck to like what this was actually like. But of course they added these like fantasy element twists to it, and of course a little like YA romance going on. And I just really enjoyed it, and I thought it was done so well and so interestingly. I liked it. And then the last YA book that I want to talk about is How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories. I got this for $3 at my library's book sale. Somebody donated it and I saw them donate it and I was like, that's mine. If you don't know, this is from the Cruel Prince series by Holly Black, which is a fairy situation. Oh my god, look at the illustrations though. Look at Carden eating boba tea and dumplings. Come on. Come on. And like this illustration, I just can't. I'm so happy. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story, but mostly I'm just so happy to have these illustrations and this like beautiful book to keep on my shelf. Okay, now some like non-YA books that I have read recently. First of all, I want to talk about Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. I've read other Grady Hendrix books and I loved them, but I hadn't read a Horror Store yet, and so I finally read it. It was so good. The thing I love about Grady Hendrix is that his horror stories are not just horror stories. Like, they have a meaning and a depth to them and a commentary within them, which to me is what horror should be. It's not just about like cheap superficial thrills. Like, horror says something as a genre. And that's what I love about it, and I love that Grady Hendrix is like staying true to that. It's about this store which is very clearly based on IKEA, and it's built on the grounds where this old 1800s era prison used to be. So obviously there were some bad things going on in this prison, and now that is kind of like bubbling up in a haunting-like fashion in the IKEA store, which obviously draws a lot of parallels as far as like capitalism and work culture and kind of like the labor exploitation that we have in the world today. I just really love it. I thought it was so brilliant. I don't know if I don't know, like I haven't heard anybody else talk about that. Maybe I will do an essay on this book because I was so inspired. I was like, I could write a thesis on this book for like my literature degree. Another kind of scary book that I read was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and this is about a woman, a black woman who lives in this neighborhood, I believe in New York City, and the neighborhood is becoming slowly gentrified by white people and rich people. And her neighbors, the people that have lived there all along in this very black community, are disappearing because they're supposedly moving away, you know, to other places because this has become so unaffordable now, which is horrible and scary enough. But on top of that, you know, it's kind of coming to light that that's not actually what's happening to them. So there were parts when my heart was like legitimately pounding. And also, again, I think that this is such a good example of horror done right. Another kind of scary book I read recently that I loved so much was The Death of Jane Lawrence. First of all, this cover, can you even? I believe it was inspired by Crimson Peak, and it was very Crimson Peak-y. A very gothic romance situation. It's about this woman. It's the early 1900s. I believe it's like post World War I, and she decides that she wants to get married, but not for love purposes, only for like, basically it's a business proposal. And she finds like an eligible bachelor in the town who she thinks would be amenable to this proposition, and she approaches him. He's a doctor, and he agrees, and they get married. But his conditions, and he's very adamant about this, is that she will always stay the night at, you know, their apartment in town, and he will always stay the night at his family's estate, like crumbling abandoned mansion estate that's like a few miles outside of town. She will never under any circumstances be allowed to stay the night at his estate. And of course, as they, you know, enter into this relationship, things, you know, the lines get a little blurred between, is this a business proposition or do we actually like each other now? There's a storm or something, so she has to stay the night at the mansion one night, and like scary stuff is happening. There's like this ghost of this woman there, and things just kind of snowball, and it's really good. You know, I love my gothic romance situations, and this is a great addition to the genre. And then another adult fiction book that I read and really enjoyed was Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch. This book is hard to explain because it's kind of funny and like satirical, but it's also like about very serious, kind of sad situations. It's set in like 1600s Germany, and this woman, this old woman that lives in this village, has been accused of being a witch because some woman that she had an argument with one time got a leg injury or something. You know what I mean? Like, and the people are just like, she did it, she looked at me funny. And soon enough, everyone in the village is like, well, last week she walked past my chicken coop and then one of my chickens died the next day. It just like spirals out of control, and it's so sad watching this happen to this poor woman. But then it's also like really just funny how ridiculous and just absolutely nonsense the whole situation is. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I feel like there must be some kind of deeper understanding or meaning in this book that I missed, and I'm like not fully grasping. Like I can feel that, but what I did understand on, you know, just the surface level of reading this book, I had a really good time reading it and I liked it. All right, and then my last category of books that I want to talk about are the nonfiction books I've read recently. I read two books that are kind of the same. I read The Nature Fix and then also The Secret Therapy of Trees, I believe. They're both about pretty much the same thing, and that is that there has been a lot of like scientific study and research that shows with like hard data and like medical fact that being in nature and observing nature, the things that like, okay, you're breathing in molecules that the trees are producing, the water in like a river is like ionizing the air, the visual aspect of being in nature, like the way that like fractals appear in nature, stuff like that, it all actually has like a very measurable and very significant effect on our bodies and our brains. Like the chemicals balance out better, and we're just like having a better time, you know, which I think sounds like common sense because you're like, of course, everyone who doesn't feel better when they're in a field full of trees and flowers and birds, right? Like, duh. Like, I'm a forest kid myself. Like, I grew up barefoot in the woods, so it's something that's always been like close to my heart. And I liked to see a more scientific version of that, I guess. The next book that I read is called The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating, and this was so good. It's about this woman who, she gets a viral infection and the doctors don't know what it is. It's like this mystery thing, but it really takes a toll on her health to the point where she becomes bedridden for like an extended amount of time. I think like a year or more, probably several years, I don't know. And so there's this period of time where she is having a caretaker take care of her because, like I said, she's bedridden and she can't even sit up in bed like to read a book or anything. I just can't imagine how like miserable that would be. And her caretaker one day in the garden like finds a snail, and she brings the snail inside and like puts it on the potted plant that's next to her bed. The woman like forms this bond and this connection with this snail, and she's just fascinated by like watching this snail live its life on her nightstand. And you know, she has nothing else to do except watch this snail all day long do its snail stuff. The book is her like observations of the snail and how it affected her, but also like a lot of snail facts which I just thought was super fun. I learned so much about snails. Did you know that snails have like different slimes? They can make different slime for whatever they need of. They have a transportation slime that is like more slippery and lets them like slither faster. Or if they need to climb something, then they have a like super sticky slime that like is better for that. I don't know. It's just so fascinating. Snails are so cool. So I highly recommend this. It's a short read too. And it's just super fun and interesting. And yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this video. I know this has been probably the longest video in the history of my channel. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to catch up. Yeah, I'm cannonballing back in with a splash, I guess. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're still here, thanks for hanging out. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or want to chat about them, because I would love to. And yeah, I hope that I will see you in more videos to come soon. Like I said, I'm feeling just so much more refreshed and so much more good about making content again. I hope we're on the up and up now. So I'd love to talk to you in the comments, and I hope I'll get to talk to you soon. Bye!